If you've got the dreaded stuffy nose this cold and flu season, try Vicks Sinex Nasal Spray. A couple of Sinex nasal sprays, and it works in seconds to clear your nose and lasts up to 12 hours. Be ready for when congestion strikes. Sinex Nasal Spray, use as directed. Doug Gottlieb in for Colin. This is The Herd here on Fox Sports Radio and Fox Sports 1. I guess the world does need an anti-hero, and on many levels, I understand kind of where the Baker Mayfield thing and how our embrace of it comes from, right? Like, what Baker Mayfield's doing is a little bit like what the president kind of captured during his march toward election. It really is. Sometimes we're tired of everybody having to play nice and having to be politically correct. But much like there's a decorum that should be required for 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, there is a certain level of decorum that should be required to be a franchise quarterback in the National Football League, or at least that's what we thought until Baker Mayfield came on the scene. Pretty amazing stuff, really, right? A guy who was twice over a walk-on, was essentially replaced coming off of injury at Texas Tech, and then walked on in Oklahoma, sat out, earned his spot, and then became a Heisman Trophy finalist and ultimately a Heisman Trophy winner. Then marched all his way to being the number one overall pick in the NFL draft. And it is one of those things where you're like, hey, dude, look, you made it. You made it. And Baker understands what makes him who he is this, look, I've been told no. It came out on Christmas Eve when he tweeted at Colin Cowherd. This is from Baker Mayfield's own Twitter account. Quote, "Merry Christmas to everybody. Enjoy the time with loved ones, especially a special time of year. Even you, at Colin Cowherd, you Grinch." All right, I like that. I mean, because all Colin Cowherd said was, look, he can play, but he's a better version of Case Keenum. Case Keenum with a better arm. Same offense, same historic numbers, same success at college, also like Case Keenum undersized, same level of intelligence, just slightly better arm strength. But a sizable amount of ego, which sometimes writes checks that his body can't cash. Right? Colin, like people I know in the NFL, said that Sam Darnold is a better prospect and ultimately has the higher ceiling, even though if he hasn't performed as well statistically as Baker Mayfield. What's fascinating about this is why it works, why it seems to be working. Right? Like Kevin Durant tries to be the evil villain. And I don't think it's a racial thing, although maybe there is a certain racial element to it. But it's because Kevin Durant's 7 feet tall. Right? But Kevin Durant LeBron James tried to wear the black hat when he left Cleveland and went to Miami originally. He tried to be like, come on, bring on the haters. I'm taking notes. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to remember it. It's a lot. It's a burden to carry. Now, one of the big differences is in the NBA, you can be put on an island and isolated. You have to play both ends of the floor. And Baker Mayfield is playing the most protected position in sports. So even if you want to level Baker Mayfield, you better wait till an interception. And even then, you got to be very careful when you get a shot in because you can get thrown out of the game. But Baker Mayfield, this act works not because I don't believe, because he's white, although I'm sure there's an element to it. It's because of his story, because he's undersized, and because it's Cleveland. It should be noted that this winning streak, or the wins that they have accrued, like who's the best team they've beaten? Carolina, Atlanta, Cincinnati. Baker Mayfield did beat the Baltimore Ravens. That was before the quarterback change was made in Baltimore. Baltimore was a different club. It was an ugly game. They did, in fact, win that game. Let's not take away wins that he has. That's the one win over a potential playoff team that they have. And look, he walked into the perfect setup. They'd won one game the past 2 years. He's replacing Tyrod Taylor, who looked like a guy who could not play the quarterback position. Looked like a backup, that he essentially is, who's a part-time starter. He was with a coach who appeared to be over his head. He's in a city where everybody leaves, and a team that quietly has accrued a bunch of talent during the past couple of years. And if you go back, they gave away games based upon their kicking game and laughable errors the first couple games of the season. Even with Tyrod Taylor, they gave away a couple games because their kicking game. But everyone said they were actually picked. Many people who cover the NFL picked them to compete for the playoffs this year because they do have talent. They do have dudes there. They did spend a bunch of money. They went out and got Jarvis Landry from Miami. They have drafted well in the defensive line. But because they won one game in the past 2 years, because LeBron James has twice left the city, because they're kind of the laughingstock, because it's Baker Mayfield, who's 6'0", 100-0, walk-on Rudy type of story in terms of our imagery. I mean, like, look, I think it's a great story, but let's not kid ourselves. He was, in fact, the number one pick of the NFL draft, right? Like, he won the Heisman Trophy. We paint it as this complete underdog story. Yeah. Teams missed out of high school. Teams missed on a transfer. No one missed. If he didn't go 1 overall, he was going in the top 10. The Jets were going to draft him because they thought Sam Darnold was the rightful number 1 overall pick, or maybe the Giants wouldn't be dumb enough to take running back over a quarterback, but they were. But because of the narrative, because it's Cleveland, because it's Baker, somehow we become super cool with Baker continuing to run his mouth. And like, look, I get it. I understand it. This is what he said yesterday in regards to the admitted stare down of his former head coach, Hugh Jackson.
Everybody's different. Everybody leads a different way. Everybody's competitive in a different way. I'm not trying to be anybody else. I've been who I am. That's gotten me here. I don't have to make any friends outside of this locker room. I'm not trying to do that. You know, once they're in here, they know exactly what they're going to get, and that's what really matters.
That's what really matters. It's interesting because he's actually made Hugh Jackson, who can't coach, right? Can't coach, as a head coach, into a sympathetic figure. Right? You're like, wow, I actually kind of feel bad for Hugh Jackson. Right? Like, look, when we go back and look at it, Hugh Jackson might not have wanted Baker Mayfield, might have wanted Sam Darnold. Probably, by most reports, wanted a quarterback going back to last year in the first round of the draft. But they didn't take one. That wasn't his choice. He was overruled in terms of what they wanted to do. Remember, he wanted to trade for A.J. McCarron last year because he just wanted somebody who knew his system, who could get the ball out to guys out in space and give himself a chance, but he didn't have it. And so, yeah, Hugh Jackson shot himself in the foot. If you listen really intently to some of the things he tried to paint as what went wrong, Hugh Jackson was given Todd Haley. That wasn't his choice. You know, John Dorsey said, here's your offensive coordinator. And Hugh Jackson's always been an offensive guy. To bring somebody from outside of the family who Pittsburgh was done with, like, that's a hard thing. And they got fired because they couldn't get along. He got fired because he couldn't get along with an offensive coordinator who he didn't hire to begin with. But by rubbing his nose in it, which is what Baker did, and he's done continually since getting the starting job and winning games at Cleveland Browns, he's made Hugh Jackson into some sort of sympathetic figure. We're like, wow, like just because you can be a D-bag doesn't mean you should be. But in Cleveland, it works because no one's ever loved Cleveland. People have said they love Cleveland, but no one ever. And when you haven't been loved before, it's like pound puppies, right? You go adopt a pound puppy, you'll never feel the love like you get. They'll lick you to death. They'll be the most loyal dogs ever, right? That's what everybody says about a pound puppy. And that's what Cleveland is. They're pound puppies that Baker Mayfield adopted and took in as his own. And they're completely loyal to him, even though no one does this. You just don't. I mean, look, it's not President of the United States, but there is something to that. There's a certain level of decorum which comes with the job. Do I love the politically correct? Hey, this is a great team that we just beat. We competed really hard. They competed really hard. We were very fortunate. Right? Like, do I love the Russell Wilson where he has to mention every different guy on his team and then give the thanks above for that third down conversion? Not really. Okay? It does seem fake. It does seem forced. But this is the other side to it. And while competitive nature and competitive makeup has absolutely made Baker And he has the edge. You don't want him to lose that edge. But there's a way to have the edge inside the football field, right? Inside the 100 by 50. And yet handle the position with class and maturity. Something he has yet to learn, and he may learn the hard way. There is going to be adversity. We have seen rookie quarterbacks come in. Look, passer completion percentage since week 10, fourth in the NFL. Yards per attempt, first. They're throwing the ball downfield. He's taking chances. Should be pointed out, the wins are against some of the worst defenses in the NFL. The Bengals are a little bit better since Marvin Lewis took over, but they were on a path to being the worst defense in the history of the NFL. He's played them twice. Congratulations on beating the Raiders, who are trying to be bad. Congratulations on beating the Falcons, who are going to fire everybody because they've been that bad and they're that banged up defensively. Like the reality, they lost to the Raiders. The reality is Baker Mayfield's been good. The team is playing better. He should feel good about himself. But you can feel good about yourself without smashing other people along the way, without stepping on the ones that you felt like held you back in the past. All right, let's get to Ryan Music with